Hello and welcome to the next reading. Tonight it's a bit of a bumper fest on ghost stories. We've got a slightly longer, we've got a 17-page story, then a very short one, only about 4 pages, and then another one of 11. Before, well, tomorrow night's reading is a 42-page one. So the first story tonight, the 14th story, is The Real and the Counterfeit by Louisa Baldwin. And the address is Stonecroft House near Garthside in Northumberland, England. The property is Kirker's 17th century country house, built of stone with spacious rooms and a magnificent oak-panelled hall. Historically important property erected on the site of a Cistercian monastery destroyed during the Reformation. And the year is December 1895. And the agent, the author, is Louisa Baldwin, 1845 to 1925, so she was 79-80. She was born in Cambridge and got her inspiration to become a novelist and poet from being related to Rudyard Kipling. She enjoyed considerable popularity with Victorian readers for her trio of society novels, The Story of a Marriage, 1880, Where Town and Country Meet, 1885, and Richard Dare, 1890. Her interest in the supernatural prompted her to write ghost stories for the Christmas issues of several magazines, and these were later collected as The Shadow on the Blind in 1895. The Real and the Counterfeit, tonight's story, is one of the best, recounting the terrible fate that awaits a practical joker who masquerades as a ghost in a haunted house. Will Musgrave determined that he would neither keep Christmas alone nor spend it again with his parents and sisters in the south of France. The Musgrave family annually migrated southward from their home in Northumberland, and Will as regularly followed them to spend a month with them in the Riviera, till he had almost forgotten what Christmas was like in England. He rebelled at having to leave the country at a time when, if the weather was mild, he should be hunting, or if it was severe, skating, and he had no real or imaginary need to winter in the south. His chest was of iron and his lungs of brass. A raking east wind that drove his parents into their thickest furs and taught them the number of their teeth by enabling them to count a separate and well-defined 8 for each, only brought a deeper colour into the cheek and a brighter light into the eye of the weatherproof youth. Decidedly he would not go to Cannes, though it was no use annoying his father and mother and disappointing his sisters by telling them beforehand of his determination. Will knew very well how to write a letter to his mother, in which his defection should appear as an event brought about by the overmastering power of circumstances, to which the sons of Adam must submit. No doubt that a prospect of hunting or skating, as the fates might decree, influenced his decision, but he had also long promised himself the pleasure of a visit from 2 of his college friends, Hugh Armitage and Horace Lawley, and he asked that they might spend a fortnight with him at Stonecroft, as a little relaxation had been positively ordered for him by his tutor. "Bless him," said his mother fondly when she had read his letter. "I will write to the dear boy and tell him how pleased I am with his firmness and determination." But Mr. Musgrave muttered inarticulate sounds as he listened to his wife, expressive of incredulity rather than of acquiescence, and when he spoke it was to say, "Devil of a row 3 young fellows will kick up alone at Stonecroft. We shall find the stables full of broken-kneed horses when we go home again." Will Musgrave spent Christmas Day with the Armitages at their place near Ripon, and the following night they gave a dance, at which he enjoyed himself as only a very young man can do, who had not yet had his fill of dancing, and who would like nothing better than to waltz through life with his arm round his pretty partner's waist. The following day, Musgrave and Armitage left for Stonecroft, picking up Lawley on the way, and arriving at their destination late in the evening in the highest spirits and with the keenest appetites. Stonecroft was a delightful haven of refuge at the end of a long journey across country in bitter weather, when the east wind was driving the light dry snow into every nook and cranny. The wide, hospitable front door opened into an oak-panelled hall with a great open fire burning cheerily, and lighted by lamps from overhead that effectually dispelled all gloomy shadows. As soon as Musgrave had entered the house, he seized his friends, and before they had time to shake the snow from their coats, kissed them both under the mistletoe bough, and set the servants tittering in the background. "You're miserable substitutes for your betters," he said, laughing and pushing them from him, "but it's awfully unlucky not to use the mistletoe. Barker, I hope supper's ready, and that it is something very hot and plenty of it, for we've travelled on empty stomachs and brought them with us." And he led his guests upstairs to their rooms. "What a jolly gallery!" said Lawley enthusiastically, as they entered a long wide corridor with many doors and several windows in it, and hung with pictures and trophies of arms. "Yes, it's our one distinguishing feature at Stonecroft," said Musgrave. "It runs the whole length of the house from the modern end of it to the back, which is very old and built on the foundations of a Cistercian monastery which once stood on this spot. The gallery's wide enough to drive a carriage and pair down it, and it's the main thoroughfare of the house. My mother takes a constitutional here in bad weather, as though it were the open air, and does it with her bonnet on to aid the delusion." Armitage's attention was attracted by the pictures on the walls, and especially by the life-size portrait of a young man in a blue coat with powdered hair, sitting under a tree with a staghound lying at his feet. "An ancestor of yours?" he said, pointing at the picture. "Oh, they're all one's ancestors, and a motley crew they are. I must say for them, it may amuse you and Lawley to find from which of them I derive my good looks. That pretty youth whom you seem to admire is my great-great-grandfather. He died at 22, a preposterous age for an ancestor. But come along, Armitage, you'll have plenty of time to do justice to the pictures by daylight, and I want to show you your rooms. I see everything is arranged comfortably. We are close together. Our pleasantest rooms are on the gallery, and here we are nearly at the end of it. Your rooms are opposite to mine, and open into Lawley's in case you should be nervous in the night and feel lonely so far from home, my dear children." And Musgrave bade his friends make haste, and hurried away whistling cheerfully to his own room. The following morning the friends rose to a white world. 6 inches of fine snow, dry as salt, lay everywhere, the sky overhead a leaden lid, and all the signs of a deep fall yet to come. "Cheerful this very," said Lawley, as he stood with his hands in his pockets looking out of the window after breakfast. "The snow will have spoilt the ice for skating." "But it won't prevent wild duck shooting," said Armitage. "And I say, Musgrave, we'll rig up a toboggan out there. I see a slope that might have been made on purpose for it. If we get some tobogganing, it may snow day and night for all I care. We shall be masters of the situation anyway." "Well thought of, Armitage," said Musgrave, jumping at the idea. "Yes, but you need 2 slopes and a little valley between for real good tobogganing," objected Lawley. "Otherwise you only rush down the hill like you do from the Mount Church to Funchal, and then have to retrace your steps as you do there, carrying your car on your back, which lessens the fun considerably." "Well, we can only work with the material at hand," said Armitage. "Let's go and see if we can't find a better place for our toboggan, and something that will do for a car to slide in. A car must be a toboggan." "That's easily found. Empty wine cases are the things, and stout sticks to steer with." And away rushed the young men into the open air, followed by 6 dogs barking joyfully. "By Jove, if the snow keeps firm, we'll put runners on strong chairs and walk over to see the Harradines at Garthside. "And ask the girls to come out sledging and we'll push them," shouted Musgrave to Lawley and Armitage, who had outrun him in the vain attempt to keep up with a deer-hound that headed the party. After a long and careful search they found a piece of land exactly suited to their purpose, and it would have amused their friends to see how hard the young men worked under the beguiling name of pleasure. For 4 hours they worked like navvies, making a toboggan slide. They shovelled away the snow, then with pickaxe and spade levelled the ground, so that when a carpet of fresh snow was spread over it, their improvised car would run down a steep incline and be carried by the impetus up another till it came to a standstill in a snowdrift. "If we can only get this bit of engineering done today," said Lawley, chucking a spadeful of earth aside as he spoke, "the slide will be in perfect order for tomorrow." "Yes, and when once it's done forever," said Armitage, working away cheerfully with his pick where the ground was frozen hard and full of stones, and cleverly keeping his balance on the slope as he did so. "Good work lasts no end of a time, and posterity will bless us for leaving them this magnificent slide." "Posterity may, my dear fellow, but hardly our progenitors if my father should happen to slip down it," said Musgrave. When their task was finished, and the friends were transformed in appearance from navvies into gentlemen, they set out through thick falling snow to walk to Garthside to call on their neighbours the Harradines. They had earned their pleasant tea and lively talk, their blood was still aglow from their exhilarating work, and their spirits at the highest point. They did not return to Stonecroft till they had compelled the girls to name a time when they would come with their brothers and be launched down the scientifically prepared slide, in wine cases well padded with cushions for the occasion. Late that night the young men sat smoking and chatting together in the library. They had played billiards till they were tired, and Lawley had sung sentimental songs accompanying himself on the banjo, till even he was weary, to say nothing of what his listeners might be. Armitage sat leaning his light, curly head back in the chair, gently puffing out a cloud of tobacco smoke, and he was the first to break the silence that had fallen on the little company. "Musgrave," he said suddenly, "an old house is not complete unless it is haunted. You ought to have a ghost of your own at Stonecroft." Musgrave threw down the yellow-backed novel he had just picked up, and became all attention. "So we have, my dear fellow, only it has not been seen by any of us since my grandfather's time. It is the desire of my life to become personally acquainted with our family ghost." Armitage laughed, but Lawley said, "You would not say that if you really believed in ghosts." "I believe in them most devoutly, but I naturally wish to have my faith confirmed by sight. You believe in them too, I can see." "Then you see what does not exist, and so far you are in a fair way to see ghosts." "No, my state of mind is this," continued Lawley. "I neither believe nor entirely disbelieve in ghosts. I am open to conviction on the subject. Many men of sound judgment believe in them, and others of equally good mental capacity don't believe in them. I merely regard the case of the bogies as not proven. They may or may not exist, but till their existence is plainly demonstrated, I decline to add such an uncomfortable article to my creed as a belief in bogies." Musgrave did not reply, but Armitage laughed a strident laugh. "I'm 1 against 2. I'm in an overwhelming minority," he said. "Musgrave frankly confesses his belief in ghosts, and you are neutral, neither believing nor disbelieving, but open to conviction. Now I'm a complete unbeliever in the supernatural, root and branch. People's nerves no doubt play them queer tricks, and will continue to do so to the end of the chapter. And if I was so fortunate as to see Musgrave's family ghost tonight, I should no more believe in it than I do now. By the way, Musgrave, is the ghost a lady or a gentleman?" he asked flippantly. "I don't think you deserve to be told." "Don't you know that a ghost is neither he nor she?" said Lawley. "Like a corpse, it is always it." That's a piece of very definite information from a man who neither believes nor disbelieves in ghosts. How do you come by it, Lawley?" asked Armitage. May not a man be well informed on a subject, although he suspends his judgment about it? I think I have the only logical mind among us. Musgrave believes in ghosts, though he has never seen one. You don't believe in them, and say that you would not be convinced if you saw one, which is not wise, it seems to me. It is not necessary to my peace of mind to have a definite opinion on the subject. After all, it is only a matter of patience, for if ghosts really exist, we shall each be one in the course of time, and then, if we've nothing better to do and are allowed to play such unworthy pranks, we may appear again on the scene, and impartially scare our credulous and incredulous surviving friends. Then I shall try to be beforehand with you, Lawley, and turn bogey first. It would suit me better to scare than to be scared. But Musgrave, do tell me about your family ghost. I'm really interested in it, and I'm quite respectful now. Well, mind you are, and I shall have no objection to tell you what I know about it, which is briefly this. Stonecroft, as I told you, is built on the site of an old Cistercian monastery destroyed at the time of the Reformation. The back part of the house rests on the old foundations, and its walls are built with the stones that were once part and parcel of the monastery. The ghost that has been seen by members of the Musgrave family for 3 centuries past is that of a Cistercian monk, dressed in the white habit of his order. Who he was, or why he has haunted the scenes of his earthly life so long, there is no tradition to enlighten us. The ghost has usually been seen once or twice in each generation, but as I said, it has not visited us since my grandfather's time, so like a comet it should be due again presently. How you must regret that was before your time, said Armitage. Of course I do, but I don't despair of seeing it yet. At least I know where to look for it. It has always made its appearance in the gallery, and I have my bedroom close to the door where it was last seen, in the hope that if I open my door suddenly, some moonlight night, I may find the monk standing there. Standing where? Asked the incredulous Armitage. In the gallery. To be sure, midway between your 2 doors and mine. That is where my grandfather last saw it. He was waked in the dead of night by the sound of a heavy door shutting. He ran into the gallery where the noise came from, and standing opposite the door of the room I occupy was the white figure of the Cistercian monk. As he looked, it glided the length of the gallery and melted like mist into the wall. The spot where he disappeared is on the old foundations of the monastery, so that he was evidently returning to his own quarters. And your grandfather believed that he saw a ghost? Asked Armitage disdainfully. Could he doubt the evidence of his senses? He saw the thing as clearly as we see each other now, and it disappeared like a thin vapour against the wall. My dear fellow, don't you think that it sounds more like an anecdote of your grandmother than of your grandfather? Remarked Armitage. He did not intend to be rude, though he succeeded in being so, as he was instantly aware by the expression of cold reserve that came over Musgrave's frank face. Forgive me, but I never can take a ghost story seriously, he said, but this much I will concede. They may have existed long ago in what were literally the Dark Ages, when rushlights and sputtering dip candles could not keep the shadows at bay. But in this latter part of the 19th century, when gas and the electric light have turned night into day, you have destroyed the very conditions that produce the ghost, or rather the belief in it, which is the same thing. Darkness has always been bad for human nerves. I can't explain why, but so it is. My mother was in advance of the age on the subject, and always insisted on having a good light burning in the night nursery, so that when as a child I woke from a bad dream, I was never frightened by the darkness. And in consequence, I have grown up a complete unbeliever in ghosts, spectres, wraiths, apparitions, doppelgangers, and the whole bogey crew of them. And Armitage looked round calmly and complacently. Perhaps I might have felt as you do if I had not begun life with the knowledge that our house was haunted, replied Musgrave, with visible pride in the ancestral ghost. I only wish that I could convince you of the existence of the supernatural from my own personal experience. I always feel it to be the weak point in a ghost story, that it is never told in the first person. It is a friend or a friend of one's friend who was the lucky man and actually saw the ghost. And Armitage registered a vow to himself that within a week from that time Musgrave should see his family ghost with his own eyes, and ever after be able to speak with his enemy in the gate. Several ingenious schemes occurred to his inventive mind for producing the desired apparition, but he had to keep them burning in his breast. Lawley was the last man to aid and abet him in playing a practical joke on their host, and he feared he should have to work without an ally. And though he would have enjoyed his help and sympathy, it struck him that it would be a double triumph achieved if both his friends should see the Cistercian monk. Musgrave already believed in ghosts, and was prepared to meet one more than halfway, and Lawley, though he pretended to a judicial and impartial mind concerning them, was not unwilling to be convinced of their existence if it could be visibly demonstrated to him. Armitage became more cheerful than usual as circumstances favoured his impious plot. The weather was propitious for the attempt he meditated, as the moon rose late and was approaching the full. On consulting the almanac, he saw with delight that 3 nights hence she would rise at 2 a.m, and an hour later the end of the gallery nearest Musgrave's room would be flooded with her light. Though Armitage could not have an accomplice under the roof, he needed one within reach, who could use needle and thread to run up a specious imitation of the white robe and hood of a Cistercian monk. And the next day, when they went to the Harradines to take the girls out in their improvised sledges, it fell to his lot to take charge of the youngest Miss Harradine. As he pushed the low chair-on runners over the hard snow, nothing was easier than to bend forward and whisper to Kate, "I am going to take you as fast as I can, so that no one can hear what we are saying. I want you to be very kind and help me to play a perfectly harmless practical joke on Musgrave. Will you promise to keep my secret for a couple of days, when we shall all enjoy a laugh over it together?" "Oh, yes, I'll help you with pleasure, but make haste and tell me what your practical joke is to be." "I want to play ancestral ghost to Musgrave, and make him believe that he has seen the Cistercian monk in his white robe and cowl that was last seen by his respected credulous grandpapa." "What a good idea! I know he is always longing to see the ghost, and takes it as a personal affront that it has never appeared to him, but might it not startle him more than you intend?" And Kate turned her glowing face towards him, and Armitage involuntarily stopped the little sledge, for it is one thing to wish to see a ghost, you know, and quite another to think that you see it. "Oh, you need not fear for Musgrave. We shall be conferring a positive favour on him, in helping him to see what he's so wishful to see. I'm arranging it so that Lawley shall have the benefit of the show as well, and see the ghost at the same time with him. And if 2 strong men are not a match for one bogey, leave alone a home-made counterfeit one, it's a pity." "Well, if you think it's a safe trick to play, no doubt you are right. But how can I help you? With the monk's habit, I suppose?" "Exactly. I shall be so grateful to you if you will run up some sort of garment that will look passably like a white Cistercian habit to a couple of men who I don't think will be in a critical frame of mind during the short time they are allowed to see it. I really wouldn't trouble you if I were anything of a sempster. Is that the masculine of sempstress myself? But I'm not. A thimble bothers me very much, and at college, when I have to sew on a button, I push the needle through on one side with a threepenny bit, and pull it out on the other with my teeth, and it's a laborious process." Kate laughed merrily. "Oh, I can easily make something or other out of a white dressing-gown, fit for a ghost to wear, and fasten a hood to it." Armitage then told her the details of his deeply laid scheme, how he would go to his room when Musgrave and Lawley went to theirs on the eventful night, and sit up till he was sure that they were fast asleep. Then when the moon had risen, and if her light was obscured by clouds, he would be obliged to postpone the entertainment till he could be sure of her aid. He would dress himself as the ghostly monk, put out the candles, softly open the door, and look into the gallery to see that all was ready. Then I shall slam the door with an awful bang, for that was the noise that heralded the ghost's last appearance, and it will wake Musgrave and Lawley, and bring them both out of their rooms like a shot. Lawley's door is next to mine and Musgrave's opposite, so that each will command a magnificent view of the monk at the same instant, and they can compare notes afterwards at their leisure. But what shall you do if they find you out at once? Oh, they won't do that. The cowl will be drawn over my face, and I shall stand with my back to the moonlight. My private belief is that in spite of Musgrave's yearnings after a ghost, he won't like it when he thinks he sees it. Nor will Lawley, and I expect they'll dart back into their rooms and lock themselves in as soon as they catch sight of the monk. That would give me time to whip back into my room, turn the key, strip off my finery, hide it, and be roused with difficulty from a deep sleep when they come knocking at my door to tell me what a horrible thing has happened. And one more ghost story will be added to those already in circulation. And Armitage laughed aloud in anticipation of the fun. It is to be hoped that everything will happen just as you have planned it, and then we shall all be pleased. And now will you turn the sledge round and let us join the others? We have done conspiring for the present. If we are seen talking so exclusively to each other, they will suspect that we are brewing some mischief together. Oh, how cold the wind is! I like to hear it whistle in my hair, said Kate, as Armitage deftly swung the little sledge round and drove it quickly before him, facing the keen north wind as she buried her chin in her warm furs. Armitage found an opportunity to arrange with Kate that he would meet her halfway between Stonecroft and her home on the afternoon of the next day but one, when she would give him a parcel containing the monk's habit. The Harradines and their house party were coming on Thursday afternoon to try the toboggan slide at Stonecroft, but Kate and Armitage were willing to sacrifice their pleasure to the business they had in hand. There was no other way but for the conspirators to give their friends the slip for a couple of hours, when the important parcel would be safely given to Armitage, secretly conveyed by him to his own room, and locked up till he should want it in the small hours of the morning. When the young people arrived at Stonecroft, it was Stonecraft, now it's Stonecroft, Miss Harradine apologised for her younger sister's absence, occasioned, she said, by a severe headache. Armitage's heart beat rapidly when he heard the excuse, and he thought how convenient it was for the inscrutable sex to be able to turn on a headache at will, as one turns on hot or cold water from a tap. After luncheon, as there were more gentlemen than ladies, and Armitage's services were not necessary at the toboggan slide, he elected to take the dogs for a walk and set off in the gayest spirits to keep his appointment with Kate. Much as he enjoyed maturing his ghost plot, he enjoyed still more the confidential talks with Kate that had sprung out of it, and he was sorry that this was to be the last of them. But the moon in heaven could not be stayed for the performance of his little comedy, and her light was necessary to its due performance. The ghost must be seen at 3 o'clock next morning, at the time and place arranged, when the proper illumination for its display would be forthcoming. As Armitage walked swiftly over the hard snow, he caught sight of Kate at a distance. She waved her hand gaily, and pointed smiling to the rather large parcel she was carrying. The red glow of the winter sun shone full upon her, bringing out the warm tints in her chestnut hair, and filling her brown eyes with soft lustre, and Armitage looked at her with undisguised admiration. "It's awfully good of you to help me so kindly," he said as he took the parcel from her, "and I shall come round to-morrow to tell you the result of our practical joke. But how is the headache?" he asked, smiling. "You look so unlike aches or pains of any kind. I was forgetting to inquire about it." "Thank you, it is better. It was not altogether a made-up headache, though it happened opportunely. I was awake in the night, not in the least repenting that I was helping you, of course, but wishing it was all well over. One has heard of this kind of trick sometimes proving too successful, of people being frightened out of their wits by a make-believe ghost, and I should never forgive myself if Mr. Musgrave or Mr. Lawley were seriously alarmed. Really, Miss Harradine, I don't think that you need give yourself a moment's anxiety about the nerves of a couple of burly young men. If you are afraid for anyone, let it be for me. If they find me out, they will fall upon me and rend me limb from limb on the spot. I can assure you I am the only one for whom there is anything to fear. and the transient gravity passed like a cloud from Kate's bright face, and she admitted that it was rather absurd to be uneasy about two stalwart young men compounded more of muscle than of nerves. And they parted, Kate hastening home as the early twilight fell, and Armitage, after watching her out of sight, retracing his steps with the precious parcel under his arm. He entered the house unobserved, and reaching the gallery by a back staircase, felt his way in the dark to his room. He deposited his treasure in the wardrobe, locked it up, and, attracted by the sound of laughter, ran downstairs to the drawing-room. Will Musgrave and his friends, after a couple of hours of glowing exercise, had been driven indoors by the darkness, nothing loath to partake of tea and hot cakes, while they talked and laughed over the adventures of the afternoon. Wherever have you been, old fellow?" said Musgrave as Armitage entered the room. "I believe you've a private toboggan of your own somewhere that you keep quiet." "If only the moon rose at a decent time, instead of at some unearthly hour in the night, when it's not of the slightest use to anyone, we would have gone out looking for you." "You wouldn't have had far to seek. You'd have met me on the turnpike road." "But why this subdued and chastened taste? Imagine preferring a constitutional on the high road when you might have been tobogganing with us. My poor friend, I'm afraid you are not feeling well," said Musgrave with an affectation of sympathy that ended in boyish laughter. And a wrestling match between the two young men, in the course of which Lawley more than once saved the tea-table from being violently overthrown. Presently, when the cakes and toast had disappeared before the youthful appetites, lanterns were lighted, and Musgrave and his friends and the Harraden brothers set out as a bodyguard to take the young ladies home. Armitage was in riotous spirits, and finding that Musgrave and Lawley had appropriated the two prettiest girls in the company, waltzed untrammelled along the road before them, lantern in hand, like a very will-o'-the-wisp. The young people did not part till they had planned fresh pleasures for the morrow, and Musgrave, Lawley, and Armitage returned to Stonecroft to dinner, making the fen air ring to the jovial songs with which they beguiled the homeward journey. Late in the evening, when the young men were sitting in the library, Musgrave suddenly exclaimed, as he reached down a book from an upper shelf, "Hello, I've come on my grandfather's diary. Here's his own account of how he saw the White Monk in the gallery. Lawley, you may read it if you like, but it shan't be wasted on an unbeliever like Armitage. By Jove, what an odd coincidence! It's 40 years this very night, the 30th of December, since he saw the ghost." And he handed the book to Lawley, who read Mr. Musgrave's narrative with close attention. "Is it a case of almost thou persuadest me?" asked Armitage, looking at his intent and knitted brow. "I hardly know what I think. Nothing positive either way at any rate." And he dropped the subject, for he saw Musgrave did not wish to discuss the family ghost in Armitage's unsympathetic presence. I'm just wondering how long this will go on for. Oh, another 2 and a bit pages. They retired late, and the hour that Armitage had so gleefully anticipated drew near. "Good night, both of you," said Musgrave as he entered his room. "I shall be asleep in 5 minutes. All this exercise in the open air makes a man absurdly sleepy at night." And the young men closed their doors, and silence settled down upon Stonecroft Hall. Armitage and Lawley's rooms were next to each other, and in less than a quarter of an hour Lawley shouted a cheery good night, which was loudly returned by his friend. Then Armitage felt somewhat mean and stealthy. Musgrave and Lawley were both confidingly asleep, while he sat up alert and vigilant, maturing a mischievous plot that had for its object the awakening and scaring of both the innocent sleepers. He dared not smoke to pass the tedious time, lest the telltale fumes should penetrate into the next room through the keyhole, and inform Lawley, if he woke for an instant, that his friend was awake too, and behaving as though it were high noon. Armitage spread the monk's white habit on the bed, and smiled as he touched it to think that Kate's pretty fingers had been so recently at work upon it. He need not put it on for a couple of hours yet, and to occupy the time he sat down to write. He would have liked to take a nap, but he knew that if he once yielded to sleep, nothing would wake him till he was called at 8 o'clock in the morning. As he bent over his desk, the big clock in the hall struck 1, so suddenly and sharply it was like a blow on the head, and he started violently. What a swinish sleep Lawley must be in, that he can't hear a noise like that, he thought, as snoring became audible from the next room. Then he drew the candles nearer to him and settled once more to his writing, and a pile of letters testified to his industry when again the clock struck. But this time he expected it, and it did not startle him, only the cold made him shiver. If I hadn't made up my mind to go through with this confounded piece of folly, I'd go to bed now, he thought. But I can't break faith with Kate. She's made the robe, and I've got to wear it worse luck. And with a great yawn, he threw down his pen and rose to look out of the window. It was a clear, frosty night. At the edge of the dark sky, sprinkled with stars, a faint band of cold light heralded the rising moon. How different from the grey light of dawn that ushers in the cheerful day is the solemn rising of the moon in the depth of a winter night. Her light is not to rouse a sleeping world and lead men forth to their labour. It falls on the closed eyes of the weary, and silvers the graves of those whose rest shall be broken no more. Armitage was not easily impressed by the sombre aspect of nature, though he was quick to feel her gay and cheerful influence. But he would be glad when the fast was over, and he no longer obliged to watch the rise and spread of the pale light, solemn as the dawn of the last day. He turned from the window and proceeded to make himself into the best imitation of a Cistercian monk that he could contrive. He slipped the white habit over all his clothing, that he might seem of portly size, and marked dark circles round his eyes, and thickly powdered his face a ghastly white. Armitage silently laughed at his reflection in the glass, and wished that Kate could see him now. Then he softly opened the door and looked into the gallery. The moonlight was shimmering duskily on the end window to the right of his door and Lawley's. It would soon be where he wanted it, and neither too light nor too dark for the success of his plan. He stepped silently back again to wait, and a feeling as much akin to nervousness as he had ever known came over him. His heart beat rapidly. He started like a timid girl when the silence was suddenly broken by the hooting of an owl. He no longer cared to look at himself in the glass. He had taken fright at the mortal pallor of his powdered face. Hang it all! I wish Lawley hadn't let off snoring. It was quite companionable to hear him. And again he looked into the gallery, and now the moon shed her cold beams where he intended to stand. He put out the light and opened the door wide, and stepping into the gallery, threw it to with an echoing slam that only caused Musgrave and Lawley to start and turn on their pillows. Armitage stood dressed as the ghostly monk of Stonecroft in the pale moonlight in the middle of the gallery, waiting for the door on either side to fly open and reveal the terrified faces of his friends. He had time to curse the ill luck that made them sleep so heavily that night of all nights, and to fear lest the servants had heard the noise their master had been deaf to, and would come hurrying to the spot and spoil the sport. But no one came, and as Armitage stood, the objects in the long gallery became clearer every moment as his sight accommodated itself to the dim light. I never noticed before that there was a mirror at the end of the gallery. I should not have believed the moonlight was bright enough for me to see my own reflection so far off. Only white stands out so in the dark. But is it my own reflection? Confound it all! The thing's moving, and I'm standing still. I know what it is. It's Musgrave dressed up to try to give me a fright, and Lawley's helping him. They forestalled me. That's why they didn't come out of their rooms when I made a noise fit to wake the dead. Odd we're both playing the same practical joke at the same moment. Come on, my counterfeit bogey, and we'll see which of us turns white-livered first. But to Armitage's surprise, that rapidly became terror. The white figure that he believed to be Musgrave's disguised and like himself playing ghost advanced towards him, slowly gliding over the floor which its feet did not touch. Armitage's courage was high, and he determined to hold his ground against the something ingeniously contrived by Musgrave and Lawley to terrify him into belief in the supernatural. but a feeling was creeping over the strong young man that he had never known before. He opened his dry mouth as the thing floated towards him, and there issued a hoarse, inarticulate cry that woke Musgrave and Lawley and brought them to their doors in a moment, not knowing by what strange fright they had been startled out of their sleep. Do not think them cowards that they shrank back appalled from the ghostly forms the moonlight revealed to them in the gallery. But as Armitage vehemently repelled the horror that drifted nearer and nearer to him, the cowl slipped from his head, and his friends recognised his white face, distorted by fear, and springing towards him as he staggered, supported him in their arms. The Cistercian monk passed them like a white mist that sank into the wall, and Musgrave and Lawley were alone with the dead body of their friend, whose masquerading dress had become his shroud. And the next story, the 15th, the short one, A Night at a Cottage, Richard Hughes. The address is a farm labourer's cottage near Bromyard, Worcestershire, England. The property is a 19th century thatched cottage with its own small garden set back from the road to the nearby village. Unoccupied for some years, the property is sound but requires some restoration work. The date is autumn 1926. The author, agent, is Richard Hughes, 1900 to 1976, was born in Wales, and the country is featured in a number of his short stories and novels. Educated at Oxford, he worked in the theatre for some years before achieving fame with his one-act play, The Sisters' Tragedy, 1922. Following this were several best-selling novels of high adventure, including A High Wind in Jamaica, 1929, In Hazard, 1938, and The Wooden Shepherdess, 1972. In his younger days, Richard Hughes spent a considerable time on the road in England and Europe, which gives an added frisson to this story of one man's terrifying encounter in an old deserted cottage. On the evening that I am considering, I passed by some 10 or 20 cosy barns and sheds without finding one to my liking, for Worcestershire lanes are devious and muddy, and it was nearly dark when I found an empty cottage set back from the road in a little bedraggled garden. There had been heavy rain earlier in the day, and the straggling fruit trees still wept over it. But the roof looked sound. There seemed no reason why it should not be fairly dry inside, as dry at any rate as I was likely to find anywhere. I decided, and with a long look up the road and a long look down the road, I drew an iron bar from the lining of my coat and forced the door, which was held only by a padlock and 2 staples. Inside, the darkness was damp and heavy. I struck a match, and with its haloed light I saw the black mouth of a passage somewhere ahead of me, and then it spluttered out, so I closed the door carefully, though I had little reason to fear passers-by at such a dismal hour, and in so remote a lane, and lighting another match, I crept down this passage to a little room at the far end, where the air was a bit clearer, for all that the window was boarded across. Moreover, there was a little rusted stove in this room, and thinking it too dark for any to see the smoke, I ripped up part of the wainscot with my knife, and soon was boiling my tea over a bright small fire, and drying some of the day's rain out of my steamy clothes. Presently I piled the stove with wood to its top bar, and setting my boots where they would best dry, I stretched my body out to sleep. I cannot have slept very long, for when I woke the fire was still burning brightly. It is not easy to sleep for long anyhow on the level boards of a floor, for the limbs grow numb, and any movement wakes. I turned over and was about to go again to sleep when I was startled to hear steps in the passage. As I have said, the window was boarded, and there was no other door from the little room, no cupboard even, in which to hide. It occurred to me rather grimly that there was nothing to do but to sit up and face the music, and that would probably mean being hauled back to Worcester jail, which I had left 2 bare days before, and where, for various reasons, I had no anxiety to be seen again. The stranger did not hurry himself, but presently walked slowly down the passage, attracted by the light of the fire, and when he came in he did not seem to notice me where I lay huddled in a corner, but walked straight over to the stove and warmed his hands at it. He was dripping wet, wetter than I should have thought it possible for a man to get, even on such a rainy night, and his clothes were old and worn. The water dripped from him onto the floor, he wore no hat, and the straight hair over his eyes dripped water that sizzled spitefully on the embers. It occurred to me at once that he was no lawful citizen, but another wanderer like myself, a gentleman of the road, so I gave him some sort of greeting, and we were presently in conversation. He complained much of the cold and the wet, and huddled himself over the fire, his teeth chattering, and his face in ill way. "No," I said, "it is no decent weather for the road, this. But I wonder this cottage isn't more frequented, for it's a tidy little bit of a cottage." Outside, the pale dead sunflowers and giant weeds stirred in the rain. "Tam was," he answered. "There wasn't a tighter little cot in the county, nor a purtier garden. A regular little parlour she was, but now no folk'll live in it, and there's very few tramps will stop here either. There were none of the rags and tins and broken food about that you find in a place where many beggars are used to stay." "Why's that?" I asked. He gave a very troubled sigh before answering. "Ghosts," he said. "Ghosts, him that lived here. It is a mighty sad tale, and I'll not tell it to you, but the upshot of it was that he drowned himself down to the mill pond. All slimy he was and floating when they pulled him out of it. There are folks have seen an unfloating on the pond, and folks have seen unset round the corner of the school waiting for his childer. Seems as if he had forgotten, like how they were all gone dead and the why he drowned hisself. But there are some say he walks up and down this cottage, up and down like when the smallpox had 'em, and they couldn't sleep, but if they heard his feet going up and down by their doors. Drowned hisself down to the pond, he did, and now he walks." The stranger sighed again, and I could hear the water squelch in his boots as he moved himself. "But it doesn't do for the like of us to get superstitious," I answered. "It wouldn't do for us to get seeing ghosts, or many's the wet night we'd be lying in the roadway." "No," he said, "no, it wouldn't do at all. I never had belief in walks myself." I laughed. "Nor I that," I said. "I never see ghosts, whoever may." He looked at me again in his queer melancholy fashion. "No," he said, "'spect you don't ever. Some folk do'n't. It's hard enough for poor fellows to have no money to their lodging, apart from ghosts skeering them." "It's the coppers, not spooks, make me sleep uneasy," said I. "What with coppers and meddlesome-minded folk, it isn't easy to get a night's rest nowadays." The water was still oozing from his clothes all about the floor, and a dank smell went up from him. "God, man," I cried, "can't you never get dry?" "Dry?" He made a little coughing laughter. "Dry? I shan't never be dry. 'Tisn't the likes of us that ever get dry, be it wet or fine, winter or summer. See that?" He thrust his muddy hands up to the wrist in the fire, glowering over it fiercely and madly. But I caught up my 2 boots and ran crying out into the night. So, that was the 15th, and now we'll do the 16th story, The Considerate Hosts by Thorp McClusky. And the address is Felders near Little Rock Falls, Arkansas, USA. The property is a clapboard rural house with grey, weather-beaten exterior. The building is screened by mature trees, and it has a small garden, located on a back road to Little Rock. The viewing date is December 1939, and the author, or agent, is Thorp McClusky, 1906 to we don't know when. He died. Was born in Arkansas and worked as a clerk while augmenting his income with items for the famous US pulp magazine Weird Tales, in which he contributed one of the magazine's best remembered stories, The Crawling Horror, in November 1936. The Considerate Hosts was also first published in the magazine and selected by the famous American editor Bennett Cerf as one of the all-time best supernatural tales for his collection Famous Ghost Stories 1944. Although the concept of a traveller lost in a storm may not be new, what the hero of this story discovers when he crosses the threshold of the old house certainly is. Midnight. It was raining abysmally. Not the kind of rain in which people sometimes fondly say they like to walk, but rain that was heavy and pitiless, like the rain that fell in France during the war. That must be the First World War. The road, unrolling slowly beneath Marvin's headlights, glistened like the flank of a great back snake. Almost Marvin expected it to writhe out from beneath the wheels of his car. Marvin's small coupe was the only man-made thing that moved through the seething night. Within the car, however, it was like a snug little cave. Marvin might almost have been in a theatre, unconcernedly watching some sombre drama in which he could revel without really being touched. His sensation was almost one of creepiness. It was incredible that he could be so close to the rain and still so warm and dry. He hoped devoutly that he would not have a flat tire on a night like this. Ahead, a tiny red pinpoint appeared at the side of the road, grew swiftly, then faded in the car's glare to the bull's-eye of a lantern, swinging in the gloved fist of a big man in a streaming rubber coat. Marvin automatically braked the car and rolled the right-hand window down a little way as he saw the big man come splashing towards him. "Bridge has washed away," the big man said. "Where you going, mister?" "Felder's, damn it. You'll have to go around by Little Rock Falls. Take your left up that road. It's a county road, but it's passable. Take your right after you cross Little Rock Falls Bridge. It'll bring you into Felder's." Marvin swore. The trooper's face, black behind the ribbons of water dripping from his hat, laughed. "It's a bad night, mister." "Gosh, yes, isn't it? Well, if he must detour, he must detour. What a night to crawl for miles along a rutty back road." Rutty was no word for it. Every few feet Marvin's car plunged into water-filled holes, gouged out from beneath by the settling of the light roadbed. The sharp cutting sound of loose stone against the tyres was audible even above the hiss of the rain. 4 miles and Marvin's motor began to sputter and cough. Another mile and it surrendered entirely. The ignition was soaked. The car would not budge. Marvin peered through the moisture-streaked windows, and vaguely, like blacker masses beyond the road, he sensed the presence of thickly clustered trees. The car had stopped in the middle of a little patch of woods. "Judas," Marvin thought disgustedly. "What a swell place to get stalled." He switched off the lights to save the battery. He saw the glimmer, then through the intervening trees, indistinct in the depths of rain. Where there was a light there was certainly a house and perhaps a telephone. Marvin pulled his hat tightly down upon his head, clasped his coat collar up round his ears, got out of the car, pushed the small coupe over on the shoulder of the road, and ran for the light. The house stood perhaps 20 feet back from the road, and the light shone from a front room window. As he ploughed through the muddy yard, there was no sidewalk. Marvin noticed a second stalled car, a big sedan standing black and deserted a little way down the road. The rain was beating him, soaking him to the skin. He pounded on the house door like an impatient sheriff. Almost instantly the door swung open, and Marvin saw a man and a woman standing just inside, in a little hallway that led directly into a well-lighted living room. The hallway itself was quite dark, and the man and woman were standing close together, almost as though they might be endeavouring to hide something behind them. But Marvin, wholly preoccupied with his own plight, failed to observe how unusual it must be for these two rural people to be up and about, fully dressed long after midnight. Partly shielded from the rain by the little overhang above the door, Marvin took off his dripping hat and urgently explained his plight. "My car won't go. Wire's wet, I guess. I wonder if you'd let me use your phone. I might be able to get somebody to come out from Little Rock Falls. I'm sorry that I had to—" "That's all right," the man said. "Come inside. When you knocked at the door, you startled us. We really hadn't— well, you know how it is, in the middle of the night and all. But come in." "We'll have to think this out differently, John," the woman said suddenly. "Think what out differently?" thought Marvin absently. Marvin muttered something about you never can be too careful about strangers, what with so many hold-ups and all. And oddly he sensed that in the half-darkness the man and woman smiled briefly at each other, as though they shared some secret that made any conception of physical danger to themselves quietly, mildly amusing. "We weren't thinking of you in that way," the man reassured Marvin. "Come into the living room." The living room of that house was just ordinary. 2 overstuffed chairs, a davenport, a bookcase. Nothing particularly modern about the room, not elaborate but adequate. In the brighter light Marvin looked at his hosts. The man was around 40 years of age, the woman considerably younger, 28 or perhaps 30, and there was something definitely attractive about them. It was not their appearance so much, for in appearance they were merely ordinary people. The woman was almost painfully plain, but they moved and talked with a curious singleness of purpose. They reminded Marvin of a pair of grey doves. Marvin looked around the room until he saw the telephone in a corner, and he noticed with some surprise that it was one of the old-style coffee-grinder affairs. The man was watching him with peculiar intentness. "We haven't tried to use the telephone tonight," he told Marvin abruptly, "but I'm afraid it won't work." "I don't see how it can work," the woman added. Marvin took the receiver off the hook and rotated the little crank. No answer from Central. He tried again several times, but the line remained dead. The man nodded his head slowly. "I didn't think it would work," he said then. "Wires down or something, I suppose?" Marvin hazarded. "Funny thing, I haven't seen one of those old-style phones in years. Didn't think they used them any more." "You're out in the sticks now," the man laughed. He glanced from the window at the almost opaque sheets of rain falling down outside. "You might as well stay here a little while. While you're with us, you'll have the illusion at least that you're in a comfortable house." "What on earth is he talking about?" Marvin asked himself. "Is he just a little bit off, maybe? That last sounded like nonsense." Suddenly the woman spoke. "He'd better go, John. He can't stay here too long, you know. It would be horrible if someone took his licence number and people jumped to conclusions afterward. No one should know that he stopped here." The man looked thoughtfully at Marvin. "Yes, dear, you're right. I hadn't thought that far ahead. I'm afraid, sir, that you'll have to leave," he told Marvin. "Something extremely strange." Marvin bristled angrily and buttoned his coat with an air of affronted dignity. "I'll go," he said shortly. "I realise perfectly that I'm an intruder. You should not have let me in. After you let me in, I began to expect ordinary human courtesy from you. I was mistaken. Good night." The man stopped him. He seemed very much distressed. "Just a moment. Don't go till we explain. We have never been considered discourteous before, but tonight, I must introduce myself. I am John Reed, and this is my wife Grace." He paused significantly as though that explained everything, but Marvin merely shook his head. "My name's Marvin Phelps, but that's nothing to you. All this talk seems pretty needless." The man coughed nervously. "Please understand, we're only asking you to go for your own good." "Oh, sure," Marvin said. "Sure, I understand perfectly. Good night." The man hesitated. "You see," he said slowly, "things aren't as they seem. We're really ghosts." You don't say. My husband is quite right, the woman said loyally. We've been dead 21 years. 22 years next October, the man added, after a moment's calculation. It's a long time. Well, I never heard such hooey, Marvin babbled. Kindly step away from that door, mister, and let me out of here before I swing from the heels. I know it sounds odd, the man admitted without moving, and I hope that you will realise that it's from no choosing of mine that I have to explain. Nevertheless, I was electrocuted 21 years ago for the murder of the chairman of the school board over in Little Rock Falls. Notice how my head is shaved and my split trouser leg? The fact is that whenever we materialise, we have to appear exactly as we were in our last moment of life. It's a restriction on us. Screwy, certainly screwy. And yet Marvin hazily remembered that school board affair. Yes, the murderer had been a fellow named Reed. The wife had committed suicide a few days after burial of her husband's body. It was such an odd insanity. Why, they both believed it. They even dressed the part. That odd dress the woman was wearing. Way out of date. And the man's slit trouser leg. The screwy cluck had even shaved a little patch on his head too, and his shirt was open at the throat. They didn't look dangerous, but you never can tell. Better humour them and get out of here as quick as I can. Marvin cleared his throat. If I were you, why say I'd have lots of fun materialising. I'd be at it every night. Build up a reputation for myself. The man looked disgusted. I should kick you out of doors, he remarked bitterly. I'm trying to give you a decent explanation and you keep making fun of me. Don't bother with him, John, the wife exclaimed. It's getting late. Mr. Phelps, the self-styled ghost doggedly persisted, ignoring the woman's interruption. Perhaps you noticed a car stalled on the side of the road as you came into our yard. Well, that car, Mr. Phelps, belongs to Lieutenant Governor Lyons of Felders, who prosecuted me for that murder and won a conviction although he knew that I was innocent. Of course, he wasn't Lieutenant Governor then. He was only County Prosecutor. That was a political murder, and Lyons knew it. But at that time he still had his way to make in the world, and circumstances pointed toward me. For example, the body of the slain man was found in the ditch just beyond my house. The body had been robbed. The murderer had thrown the victim's pocketbook and watch under our front steps. Lyons said that I had hidden them there, though obviously I'd never have done a suicidal thing like that had I really been the murderer. Lyons knew that too, but he had to burn somebody. What really convicted me was the fact that my contract to teach had not been renewed that spring. It gave Lyons a ready-made motive to pin on me. So he framed me. They tried, sentenced and electrocuted me, all very neatly and legally. 3 days after I was buried, my wife committed suicide. Though Marvin was a trifle afraid, he was nevertheless beginning to enjoy himself. Boy, what a story to tell the gang, if only they'd believe him. I can't understand, he pointed out slyly, how you can be so free with this house if, as you say, you've been dead 21 years or so. Don't the present owners or occupants object? If I lived here, I certainly wouldn't turn the place over to a couple of ghosts, especially on a night like this. The man answered readily, I told you that things are not as they seem. This house has not been lived in since Grace died. It's not a very modern house anyway, and people have natural prejudices. At this very moment you are standing in an empty room. Those windows are broken, the wallpaper has peeled away, and half the plaster has fallen off the walls. There is really no light in the house. If things appeared to you as they really are, you could not see your hand in front of your face. Marvin felt in his pocket for his cigarettes. Well, he said, you seem to know all the answers. Have a cigarette, or don't go smoke. The man extended his hand. Thanks, he replied. This is an unexpected pleasure. You'll notice that although there are ashtrays about the room, there are no cigarettes or tobacco. Grace never smoked, and when they took me to jail, she brought all my tobacco there to me. Of course, as I pointed out before, you see this room exactly as it was at the time she killed herself. She's wearing the same dress, for example. There's a certain form about these things, you know." Marvin lit the cigarettes. "Well," he exclaimed, "brother, you certainly seem to think of everything. Though I can't understand even yet why you want me to get out of here. I should think that after you've gone to all this trouble, arranging your effects and so on, you'd want somebody to haunt." The woman laughed dryly. "Oh, you're not the man we want to haunt, Mr. Phelps. You came along quite by accident. We hadn't counted on you at all. No, Mr. Lyons is the man we're interested in." "He's out in the hall now," the man said suddenly. He jerked his head toward the door through which Marvin had come, and all at once all this didn't seem half so funny to Marvin as it had seemed a moment before. "You see," the woman went on quickly, "this house of ours is on a back road. Nobody ever travels this way. We've been trying for years to haunt Mr. Lyons, but we've had very little success. He lives in Felders, and we're pitifully weak when we go to Felders. We're strongest when we're in this house, perhaps because we lived here so long. But tonight, when the bridge went out, we knew that our opportunity had arrived. We knew that Mr. Lyons was not in Felders, and we knew that he would have to take this detour in order to get home. We felt very strongly that Mr. Lyons would be unable to pass this house tonight. It turned out as we had hoped. Mr. Lyons had trouble with his car, exactly as you did, and he came straight to this house to ask if he might use the telephone. Perhaps he had forgotten us years ago. 21 years is a long time. Perhaps he was confused by the rain and didn't know exactly where he was. He fainted, Mr. Phelps, the instant he recognized us. We have known for a long time that his heart is weak, and we had hoped that seeing us would frighten him to death, but he is still alive. Of course, while he is unconscious, we can do nothing more. Actually, we're almost impalpable. If you weren't so convinced that we are real, you could pass your hand right through us. We decided to wait until Mr. Lyons regained consciousness, and then to frighten him again. We even discussed beating him to death with one of those non-existent chairs you think you see. You understand, his body would be unmarked. He would really die of terror. We were still discussing what to do when you came along. We realized at once how embarrassing it might prove for you if Mr. Lyons's body were found in this house tomorrow, and the police learned that you were also in the house. That's why we want you to go." "Well," Marvin said bluntly, "I don't see how I can get my car away from here. It won't run, and if I walk to Little Rock Falls and get somebody to come back here with me, the damage will be done." "Yes," the man admitted thoughtfully, "it's a problem." For several minutes they stood like a tableau, without speaking. Marvin was uneasily wondering. Did these people really have old Lyons tied up in the hallway? Were they really planning to murder the man? The big car standing out beside the road belonged to somebody. Marvin coughed discreetly. "Well, it seems to me, my dear Shades," he said, "that unless you are perfectly willing to put me into what might turn out to be a very unpleasant position, you'll have to let your vengeance ride for tonight anyway." "There'll never be another opportunity like this," the man pointed out. "That bridge won't go again in 10 lifetimes. "We don't want the young man to suffer, though, John." "It seems to me," Marvin suggested, "as though this revenge idea of yours is overdone anyway. Murdering Lyons won't really do you any good, you know." "It's the customary thing when a wrong has been done," the man protested. "Well, maybe," Marvin argued, and all the time he was wondering whether he were really facing a madman who might be dangerous or whether he were at home dreaming in bed. "But I'm not so sure about that. Hauntings are pretty infrequent, you must admit. I'd say that shows that a lot of ghosts really don't care much about the vengeance angle, despite all you say. I think that if you check on it carefully, you'll find that a great many ghosts realise that revenge isn't so much. It's really the thinking about revenge and the planning it, that's all the fun. Now, for the sake of argument, what good would it do you to put old Lyons away? Why, you'd hardly have any incentive to be ghosts any more. But if you let him go, why, say any time you wanted to, you could start to scheme up a good scare for him and begin to calculate how it would work, and time would fly like everything. And on top of all that, if anything happened to me on account of tonight, it would be just too bad for you. You'd be haunted, really. It's a bad rule that doesn't work two ways." The woman looked at her husband. "He's right, John," she said tremulously. "We'd better let Lyons go." The man nodded. He looked worried. He spoke very stiffly to Marvin. "I don't agree entirely with all you said," he pointed out, "but I admit that in order to protect you, we'll have to let Lyons go. If you'll give me a hand, we'll carry him out and put him in his car." "Actually, I suppose I'll be doing all the work." "Yes," the man agreed, "you will." They went into the little hall, and there, to Marvin's complete astonishment, crumpled on the floor laid old Lyons. Marvin recognised him easily from the newspaper photographs he had seen. "Hard-looking duffer, isn't he?" Marvin said, trying to stifle a tremor in his voice. The man nodded without speaking. Together, Marvin watched the man narrowly. They carried the lax body out through the rain and put it into the big sedan. When the job was done, the man stood silently for a moment, looking up into the black, invisible clouds. "It's clearing," he said matter-of-factly. "In an hour it'll be over." "My wife'll kill me when I get home," Marvin said. The man made a little chuckling sound. "Maybe if you wiped your ignition now, your car'd start. It's had a chance to dry a little." "I'll try it," Marvin said. He opened the hood and wiped the distributor cap and points and around the spark plugs with his handkerchief. He got in the car and stepped on the starter, and the motor caught almost immediately. The man stepped toward the door, and Marvin doubled his right fist, ready for anything. But then the man stopped. "Well, I suppose you'd better be going along," he said. "Good night." "Good night," Marvin said, "and thanks. I'll stop by one of these days and say hello." "You wouldn't find us in," the man said simply. By heaven, he is nuts, Marvin thought. "Listen, brother," he said earnestly, "you aren't going to do anything funny to old Lyons after I'm gone?" The other shook his head. "No, don't worry." Marvin let in the clutch and stepped on the gas. He wanted to get out of there as quickly as possible. In Little Rock Falls he went into an all-night lunch and telephoned the police that there was an unconscious man sitting in a car 3 or 4 miles back on the detour. Then he drove home. Early the next morning, on his way to work, he drove back over the detour. He kept watching for the little house, and when it came in sight he recognised it easily from the contour of the rooms and the spacing of the windows and the little overhang above the door. But as he came closer he saw that it was deserted. The windows were out, the steps had fallen in, the clapboards were grey and weather-beaten, and naked rafters showed through holes in the roof. Marvin stopped his car and sat there beside the road for a little while, his face oddly pale. Finally he got out of the car and walked over to the house and went inside. There was not one single stick of furniture in the rooms. Jagged scars showed in the ceilings where the electric fixtures had been torn away. The house had been wrecked years before by vandals, by neglect, by the merciless wearing of the sun and the rain. In shape alone were the hallway and living room as Marvin remembered them. There, he thought, is where the bookcases were. The table was there, the davenport there. Suddenly he stooped and stared at the dusty boards and underfoot. On the naked floor lay the butt of a cigarette, and 6 feet away lay another cigarette that had not been smoked, that had not even been lighted. Marvin turned around blindly, and like an automaton walked out of that house. 3 days later he read in the newspapers that Lieutenant Governor Lyons was dead. The Lieutenant Governor had collapsed, the item continued, while driving his own car home from the state capital the night the Felders Bridge was washed out. The death was attributed to heart disease. After all, Lyons was not a young man. So Marvin Phelps knew that, even though his considerate ghostly hosts had voluntarily relinquished their vengeance, blind, impartial nature had meted out justice. And in a strange way he felt glad that that was so, glad that Grace and John Reed had left to fate the punishment they had planned to impose with their own ghostly hands.